Sunset Time by a Bionicorn. Chapter 11 Blood and Magic. Camelot was nothing more than a desolate ruin now. Fire still burned, consuming everything in their greedy path, leaving only ashes that swirled and danced on air, eventually carried up by a sporadic wind. The sky was painted in bloody hues, complemented by the black smoke clouds that funneled around the city. Step by step, Sunset stumbled her way through the wreckage of her once proud city. She jumped over the wide fissures the earthquakes had torn open, scurried around pools of hot magma, and spilled from the bloody gas on the mountain face. "Hello?" she weakly called. She wasn't sure why she did. She knew in her heart of hearts that there was no pony left. Still, she was compelled to keep walking, wandering through the charred remains and calling out to survivors that would never respond. When she reached the gates of Camelot Castle, she came to a stop, raising her head to the sky. The dark orb that housed Vesper Radius was no longer there, returning the sky to a weak semblance of normality. As the sea was being drawn forward, Sunset resumed her lonely march to the castle, stepping over the broken threshold of scorched stone. The interior of the castle looked worse now than as she had left it, hills of rubble piled high all around, while the last shreds of carpets and tapestries burned away. All the windows had been completely smashed open, leaving only the colored powder behind. Sunset teleported to the top of the broken stairs and made her way down the hall to the throne room. Mysterious force calling to her like a siren's song. Something was waiting for her, and it was out of sheer curiosity Sunset kept walking, putting up no resistance. She arrived at the large ornamental doors, at least what was left of them. One had completely fallen off its hinges, and the other had severe burn marks on it. The rest of the throne room didn't fare much better. The ceiling was completely gone, like it had been completely torn off and tossed aside. Every window that had once held a piece of history was now shattered, allowing the distorted sunlight to flow freely inside. Yet, despite this, the throne room itself was completely draped in shadows. Sunset could just make out a figure lounging across it. "So good of you to come back, Sunset Shimmer." There was a false sense of glee in the raspy voice that came from the darkness. At that moment, Sunset wanted nothing more than to run away. The creature in front of her could not be equine in any sense of the word. Horrible chills crawled down her spine and spread into her blood, freezing it solid. She wanted so bad to retreat, yet her legs brought her forward instead, halting her in place in the center of the hall. "You aren't scared, are you, Sunset Shimmer?" Two balls of scarlet flame appeared where a set of eyes should have been, burning with such an intensity. Sunset was amazed she didn't melt on the spot. "Oh no, you're absolutely terrified." The creature burst into heartless laughter that rang in Sunset's ears and vibrated through the decrepit hall. Finally feeling herself regaining control of her limbs, Sunset turned and bolted for the door, only to have a shadow appear in front of her, barring her passage. It was a nondescript thing. The only features that Sunset could tell belonged to a pony. "Why run away, Sunset? Why not accept it?" Much like its body, its voice was also indistinguishable. "Get out of my way or I'll blast you out!" There's that angry fire. Feels so good to let it burn, doesn't it? Just to act on your anger and hatred. A beam of light erupted from Sunset's horn and tore through the shadow, banishing it to oblivion. Sunset raised her head, taking deep breaths as she gathered herself together. "That's it, Sunset," a voice hissed in her ear. "Find something else to hate, then hate it with all your heart." Sunset swung a hoof around, trying to catch a shadow in her jaw. Only loud as Sunset went right through it and stumbled forward in an effort to regain her balance. "Come on, try again. I'm standing right here." Instead, Sunset took a few steps back and asked, "Who are you?" The shadow threw its head back and laughed. "I am what remains, broken, torn apart, beat down, smothered with love and friendship. But I know the truth. There is no such thing as harmony. Love and friendship are emotions that only exist until they're banished by death. advanced towards sunset. Features slowly more became defined, with familiar mane teal and a light teal in his eyes. But hatred carries on. I carry on. The more you hate Sunset Shimmer, the more anger you feel, the stronger I become. I am what makes up the truest essence of your soul. No matter how many good deeds and friends you hide behind, I will always exist! Enough! Sunset threw her hoof in front of her face as a blinding blue light enveloped the entire castle around her. There was a guttural scream that faded along with the light until Sunset could open her eyes again. Replaced by the castle was a lush, rolling field that stretched onwards in all directions for what looked forever. In the distance, Camelot could be seen on its mountain perch in all its splendor. The sky was stippled in a spectrum of darkening hues as the sun set in the west. "Are you all right, Sunset Shimmer?" a regal voice asked. Sunset turned and found Princess Luna looking down at her with constant concern. I think so. If Princess Luna was here, then everything she had just witnessed was nothing more than a dream. While that provided Sunset with some comfort, she was still shaken by the words of the shadow. "I could tell you're not being as truthful as you could be, Sunset," Luna said with a slight frown. "I'm sorry, I honestly don't know how I feel." Luna nodded. "That is natural. That was a powerful nightmare I have seen in a long time. I would be amazed if it did not leave a lasting impression. Thank you for getting rid of it." "It was my duty, Sunset. I am honor bound to protect all citizens of the sleeping world from the nightmares that lurk there. But I've also been meaning to speak with you for a while now." Sunset arched an eyebrow. "Really? About what?" Luna took a few gentle steps across the field, gaze fixing on the setting sun. "Sunset, tell me, how much do you know of your past? Are there any blank spots or gaps in your memory?" Sunset couldn't help but puff her cheeks. "No, I remember everything just fine." Luna took no notice, however. "What about your parents? The falsehood? Princess Luna, are you trying to imply something?" Sunset made no effort this time in hiding the ice in her voice. Turning back to Sunset, Luna gave her a sympathetic look. "My apologies, Sunset. I meant no offense. I believe your intentions are good. However, I also believe there is more to this story than you are aware." Sunset's voice softened. "Story? What story?" "The story of Vesper Radiance, and the doomed future from which you hail. Witnessing your nightmare proved my suspicions. There's something greater that connects you to her and those events. Something inside your subconscious that may give us the key to solving this mystery." Sunset sat down on her haunches, taking in the weight of Luna's words. What did her nightmare have to do with Vesper Radiance? Sunset was scared to find out. Perhaps it explained the voice in her head and the memories that didn't belong to her. But wait, you said subconscious as in my memories, right? I thought you could only observe dreams. A playful smile pulled at Luna's lips. What is the difference between a dream and a memory? Both could be accessed by the sleeping mind. Both could be observed. So you want me to go into my memories and see if there's something there? Sunset clarified. Luna nodded. Indeed. With your permission, of course. Well, Sunset started slowly. It will explain some things, hopefully, and if it helps us stop Vesper Radiance, then the entire dream world flickered in and out of existence. Sunset's ears stood at attention as the story cry reached her. She watched Luna's entire body go rigid before her eyes glowed with power. Limiting the air, Luna screamed, Sunset Shimmer, you must wake up, now! She slammed her hose together, and the entire dreamscape shattered like glass. Sunset's eyes snapped open in time to see a dagger lifted over her head, poised to plunge straight into her neck. She could feel a set of claws firmly pressing into her chest. Magical instincts immediately kicked in, and the blinding light radiated from Sunset's horn, forcing her to close her own eyes from the intensity. The owner of the dagger let out screams of pain, moving her away from Sunset and allowing her to roll out of harm's way. Fortunately, she had not moved fast enough, as a sharp burning sensation burned across her shoulder, forcing her to yelp in pain. Still, Sunset continued to maneuver off the bed, ignoring the warm blood that flowed out of the fresh wound, as she fought with the seats that she had wrapped herself so tightly in. When he found the edge of the bed when she rolled off of it and landed on the floor, still engaged with her struggle with the blankets. The luminosity from her horn began to fade, allowing Sunset to see what she was doing. She finally untangled herself in time to see a familiar griffin rub the spots out of his eyes. Razor? Sunset had to admit. She was more cautious than surprised at his appearance. How did the griffin manage to track her down so fast? Razor brandished his dagger, a malevolent smile spreading across his beak. Idos! I'll warn you we meet again. When Farrell cried, he lunged at Sunset, swinging his blade at her head. Sunset's telekinesis grabbed a lamp that had sat on the bedside table, and swung with full force, slamming into Razor's side before the dagger could reach her. Razor cartwheeled in midair and fell into the vanity desk that sat across the bed, cracking the mirror as he landed. A shrill scream that could only belong to Rarity reached Sunset's ears. She dropped the cracked lamp in a rush towards the door. The force of a cargo train crashed into her side as Racer blindsided her, sending her both back across the room through the window. Shards of glass bit into Sunset's skin, and familiar sensation of freefalling filled her stomach. Razor had by her throat, dagger clenched in his free hand as the two of them fell to the 10th floor of the promenade. Sunset's horn came alive once more, and it fell to her in a flash of teal light. Pressed her around her neck fast, quickly replaced by a much softer crashing sensation than the one she had just experienced, followed by a more subtle pressure around her entire body. Inky darkness surrounded her as she floated through the haunting abyss, her chest constricting like a desperate need for air. Sunset propelled herself towards the rippling surface, the sword of light sparkling on the other side. She broke through the water and gasped for breath, savoring the sweet air. Paddling for the shore of the koi pond, Sunset began to shiver violently as the cold night air clawed at her wet fur. She pulled herself out of the water, using a quick dying spell to relieve some of the bitter cold, or expecting the gas that adorned her shoulder. It was messy and had cut deep, but Sunset was grateful it hadn't reached the bone. Still, it burned something fierce and made her entire leg feel numb. Damn it! Sunset said breathlessly, still a little winded from her late night swim. She assessed herself for other wounds, was relieved she had found none. However, her hourglass was once again missing. She left behind her hotel room. She looked at the tall, rectangular building behind her. Inside, her friends, hopefully, were still alive and probably grappling with the rest of Razor's cronies. Sunset had to get back inside and help her friends retrieve her only means of traveling back to the future. Deciding to take a shortcut, Sunset froze the entire surface of the lake solid, tapping it with a hoof to make sure it was secure. Satisfied with her work, she skated across the frozen water, only to come sliding to a hasty stop when a dark figure landed in front of her, cracking part of the ice with his weight. Thought you could roll again away from me again, eh? Razor stood up at his full height, looming over Sunset. First thing you need to know about Griffin, sweetheart. We never let our play get away. First thing you need to learn about ponies is we're smarter than you think. With a flicker of light from her horn, the ice directly underneath Razor's paws vanished, forcing him to plunge straight into the water below before it froze over once more. Second thing you need to know is magic rocks. Sunset said in triumph as she skated away. She had gone 10 feet when she placed too much pressure on her bad leg, causing it to collapse underneath her. Ow! Damn it! So she managed to say before the ice behind her splattered open with a loud crack. Forrest grabbed her back hoof, pulling her back into the pond. Once again, Sunset was wrapped in the water's cold embrace, struggling against a thrashing Racer. While fighting to return to the surface, his claws dug into Sunset's ankle and kept her from progressing any further. She twisted in his grip, looking for a good angle to fire a spell, instead found a pair of talons swiping at her face. She ducked, thankful that Razor was slowed by the water's density. Sunset leased a gentle light, striking Razor in the cheek with enough force to slack his grip. She wiggled her leg free and bolted for the surface, hitting the layer of ice she now regretted creating. Her blast from her horn ripped a large hole in the frozen film, and Sunset felt her hoof come in contact with the night bitter air. A sharp dull pull on her tail kept her from surfacing, however. Razor was trying to drag her back down to the depths of the pond. Sunset's mind started to go fuzzy from the lack of oxygen. She couldn't help but wonder how deep the pool went. Her lungs now fit to burst, screaming at her to take a breath of air. Mostly all she could supply with them was a large quantity of murky water. Gasping in pain, with worn needle-type claws dug into her flank. Summoning her magic, Sunset's eyes blazed with white intensity. Familiar sensation of teleport jolting through her body. She hit a hard surface, and on a layer fell a cascade of liquid fall on top of her. When the torrent was over, Sunset took a gaping breath of air, coughing and sputtering the excess water that found its way into her lungs. Opening her eyes, Sunset quickly recognized the dim hallway of the hotel, forced herself to her host. Francie landed back on the 10th floor, steadying herself as well with support. Sunset's eyes landed on a black feathered figure, shaking itself off only a few feet away. Damn. Sunset deadpan, pushing herself off the wall in time for Razor to pounce after her. Sunset jumped out of the way, putting in her place a copious amount of water that had traveled from her spot. Razor could only watch as Sunset lifted it between them, forming a thick barrier by freezing it solid. The corridor dropped several degrees as a giant block of ice appeared, separating Sunset from Razor by a margin of at least a yard. Sunset could barely make out the Griffin on the other side, but could tell he did not look too pleased. Satisfied, but not in a mood to gloat, Sunset turned and limped down the hallway, stopping when something red caught her eye. It quickly grew in brilliance, and Sunset turned around to see it radiant from the other side of the ice wall. The ice then exploded from into millions of pieces, revealing Razor standing on his Italian outstretched. A ball of fire hovered over his palm. Sunset could make out a faint glowing marking, a look of sheer smugness written on his face. "Oh, come on!" Sunset yelled, ducking as a fireball was flung over her head. It carried on, hit the carpet, setting a blaze and spraying along the corridor. She turned and sprinted through the hall, limping through the fire and ignoring the aching pain in her shoulder. Every door she passed strengthened her conviction that she had landed on the right floor, as every room showed signs of some sort of struggle. Sunset could only hope that all of her friends made it out okay. Another fireball whizzed past her mane, setting it alight. "Sure, gives them the ability to flame fire around. It wasn't like they were dangerous enough already." Reaching the end of the hall, Sunset broke off into her room, slamming the door shut and levitating the queen-size bed in front of it, knowing it would only buy her a few additional seconds. She crossed the room, snatching her hourglass had, once again, remained untouched from the bedside table, all the while trying to come up with a plan. "I need to get out here and find the others, but I can't just keep blindly teleporting everywhere. That's way use of magic and dangerous. Surprised I haven't spliced myself yet." Both the door and the makeshift barricades simultaneously combusted into smoldering fragments, with Razor squeezing himself through the door flame, another ball of fire in his hand. It was quickly repelled by a barrage of magic missiles, detonating on impact and sending it crashing into the opposite front. A bright glow wrapped itself around Sunset's horn as he prepared to teleport again before it faded out. "Wait a minute. Why am I running?" "You tell me, sweetheart!" She dug her hose in the carpet, a confident feeling overriding all others. "I can take him. He may be able to throw fireballs, but he doesn't know the first thing about magic." Across the hall in the room that had previously belonged to Twilight, Razor was getting back to his feet after it crashed to the ground. Smashing it in half, one hand drew a large rapier out from the scabbard at his side. Another ball of fire appeared in his free hand. Sunset smiled and faltered. "Right, forgot about the swords." "Sunset, sweetie, maybe the author doesn't know the first thing about magic, but, magic can create swords. There are quite a few spells that do that. Also, telekinesis. Pull! It's also called heat metal. There's quite a few spells you can use to stop this. Like, again, heat metal. Ow, 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 ow. Chill metal. Dark cold. And many, 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 many more. This is why whenever I write, I always bring a spell book with me." Razor hurled the fire at Sunset, who got out of the way, summoning her ethereal bow as she punched back to her host. She fired a goalful arrow, gracefully dodged by Razor, and continued to shatter the opposite window. The two continued to trade projectiles, Sunset becoming increasingly aware that her room was catching fire. Both of them had a narrow frame of reins, hindered by the tight doorway and corridor between them. Thus, their contest became a game who could dodge the longest. Sunset's size gave her an advantage, but Razor was deflecting some of her shots with his sword. Eventually, Razor came to advance, sacrificing maneuverability for strictly repelling Sunset's arrows. Sunset started back up, lighting small bonfires that now littered her room. As Razor entered, an idea came to Sunset as she launched a fireball of her own. Razor blocked it, as Sunset suspected she would, but instead of dispelling, the fire clung to the metal blade, cutting it like a crimson sheath. Razor began to swing around like he was swatting a particularly large and annoying bug. Still, the fire clung to his sword, turning to melt an angry set of red. Seeing that the fire did not spread beyond the hilt, Razor decided to ignore it and take a swing at Sunset. Sunset ducked, used her magic to rip the nozzle of the bathroom sink off, causing the geyser of water to burst in the air. Taking another swipe of Razor's flaming sword, she directed the roaring jet right towards him, dousing him with gallons of water. One fight down, Sunset was left with a very wet, very angry Griffith. He raised his sword, now free of its flames, and brought it down over her head. Sunset, with a nonplussed look, raised the broken nozzle as her only means of defense. The sword met the broken pipe and instantly shattered upon impact, leaving Razor with nothing more than a handle and an outraged expression. Sunset quickly raised the nozzle and brought it down on top of Razor's head before he could recover, sending him straight to the ground. He groaned, but did not get back up. Now in a mood to gloat, Sunset dropped the pipe and grinned broadly. That's 2 points for Sunset Shimmer. Please, quit lying behind. Examining the rest of the room, Sunset found that, while the flood had put out the fires, everything was a complete wreck. The bed was in disarray, the lamp lay broken on the floor, the nightstand had been destroyed by a stray blast of fire, the curtains had been completely burnt away, and the window's glass shards lay embedded in the carpet. Sighing deeply and falling back into her haunches, Sunset took another look at her wounded shoulder. She had been so busy fighting he had barely noticed it. Now the pain came in waves that caused her to wince at the slightest movement. The blood flow had reduced to a trickle now, but stained the fur around the opening and luckily seeing red. Sunset wished she knew healing magic, but those were some of the highest level spells. She hadn't gotten that far in her training. Instead, she began to tear strips off the bedsheets and wrapped them around the wound. She cursed the odd persistence of the cut, having to drag the makeshift bandages around her chest to cover it. She stood up, gingerly tasting her bad leg, and trying to carry most of her weight on her other three. So she received a jolt of pain with every step. Since it was relieved, she knew she could still walk on it. Taking 2 steps out of the window, pondering what she should do next, when she heard something scratch at the carpet. She spun around and saw Razor snap his head up and lunge there with a swipe of his claws. Sunset dropped to the floor, her horn immediately in their blinding light. She felt the temperature drop again, and looked to see a white statue looming over her. Sunset crawled out from under Razor, praised the frozen Griffith, stuck in a striking pose, beak partially open. Huh, should have done that in the first place. Yeah, but then we would have missed the cool action scene, Sunset said, tapping the tip of his nose to make sure he's still completely frozen. Oi, you, Razor managed to gurgle out of his frozen roof. Sunset translated to, I'll kill you, and merely rolled her eyes. She walked over to the broken window, minute pieces of glass covering the floor, scanned her horizon. Friends were out there somewhere in the dark night, hiding or fighting for their lives. Sunset had half a mind to defrost Razor's head and interrogate him, but she knew he probably wouldn't say a word. Sticking her head out, Sunset glanced up and down the road, not see anything within the darkness from her height. Her eyes landed on a cluster of light, cover lights that was the strip. It would be easy to try and lose someone, Sunset reasoned. She had nothing else to go on, and knew she couldn't wait around until her friends turned up. Looking down, she concentrated her energy fast from her room, reappearing on the sidewalk next to the hotel. Her eyes caught a spot of red on the white linen that added to his bandages. She tried to take it easy with the magic until it stopped bleeding. She didn't want to repeat what happened with Twilight in the desert. Seeing as walking was her only option, Sunset broke into a brisk canter towards the welcoming lights of the Las Pegasus Strip.